Welcome everyone to another edition of Late Night on Base. I'm your host, Bill the Bull. Today, honored, we got a legend in the building. His name is Toady Hawk, and I'm excited
Oh,
for this
me.
one. Yep, that would be you, the man with an amazing background in
What's
sunglasses.
up, Bill? Thanks for having me. I love what you're doing. I see you putting in the work. You're coming across my TikTok all the time, my FYP, and seeing you on X and just grinding. So love to see it.
Appreciate it,
Glad to
man.
be
It's
here.
hard. It's not hard for me to follow you because you're just posting bangers. You're always on all the platforms.
It's not
Not
hard to follow you because you never shut up, Tony. Yeah, that's fair.
Oh man, I just love what you're doing. But Toady, for those that might not know who you are, maybe they came across this on Spotify, YouTube, maybe they saw my Jesse Pod. I don't know, but they're coming across this episode and you for the first time. If you don't mind, why don't you tell them who is Toady Hawk?
Toady Hawk. Who is Toady Hawk? Well, I am a longtime member and builder in the Nouns community, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. If you're not familiar with Nouns DAO, I'm sure you will be by the end of this podcast. But Nouns is a project from 2021. I began to get involved with that community in late 2021 and even more so in 2022. I founded with some friends an on-chain media collective called the Noun Square, which is sort of one part community as a service for nouns, sort of a cultural touch point for people in that community, so that they have somewhere to sort of go every day and find the news, etc. And then we sort of grew that into also an educational content platform, so very similar to what you're doing here with Late Night on Base. We sort of specialize in doing YouTube videos, TikTok videos across all Web2 and also on-chain platforms, just teaching people how to live on-chain. So that's the Noun Square Media Collective. And then our collective also founded one of the first DAO-like organizations on Base, which is called the Yellow Collective. And it's basically an on-chain culture club that is designed and has a mission, a very strict mission of helping and empowering artists and creators on chain. So that's kind of what I get up to. That's what keeps me going in both the Nounish ecosystems and also the Base ecosystem.
Never a dull day, always busy. I like it. I
Yeah.
feel that's great. You found your kind of like your place, your home, your niche, and you're just really running with it.
Oh,
Let's
and also I also have a podcast. I should probably mention that. So we were
Oh,
talking about before you hit the record button. I was talking about how weird it is to be on this side
yeah.
of the mic, because we've got a podcast as well that we produce called Zero Pod, the Zero Rights Reserve podcast, and yeah, we just kind of try to dive in with people to talk about enjoying Ethereum. So I'm used to being the one asking the questions, and I was saying earlier, like, it's weird to be a little bit nervous. Like, what's Bill gonna ask me?
Yeah.
Is he gonna put my toes to the fire here? So
Yeah, I can
go easy on me.
I'll try, I'll try. I know the feeling though. It's like it's always different when people are asking you questions. The same with me. It's like, I do this all the time, but then when people like maybe on an interview ask me questions, I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right. Like this is different." I'm normally the one, so
Yeah,
I'll
plus
take
you can fix it in post and I can't, so you have all the control. Oh, you're frozen.
absolutely. So, listen, talk to me. Oh, it's a little bit the recording, a little frozen. We'll record this out. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
That's a little technical glitches. Perfect. Yeah, we'll work on that on editing. Let me ask you, Tony. So in 2021, nouns came into play. Talk to me. What is nouns? Because that's something that I actually myself find it very hard to, as a new participant, not in crypto, but just of knowing what nouns is. Talk to me. How do I like? Tell me the TLDR for nouns as a 5-year-old.
So the best way to think about nouns, in my opinion, is as an infinite art project that lives on chain. So the initial founder of Nouns, Punk 4156, you may have seen him around. He was sort of a big voice, a big personality in the punks community prior to Nouns. He had a lot of issues with the way they decided to limit rights to use the punk IP, for example. And sort of as a reaction to that, he thought, what if we built a community that was all around CC0? So all the art was completely open source, all the protocol was open source. And right in the middle of 2021, when every animal you could imagine was being used for a 10K PFP project. It was this like really frothy era. I don't know if you were involved in NFTs back then, but I know I was. And like, it was pudgy penguins, which are still around, but for every pudgy penguin, there was 99 other animals that just went to zero in your wallet. And so 4 and 5 6 was kind of like, well, what if instead of 10,000 NFTs minted all at once in a frenzy, what if it was just one NFT every day forever? And what if that NFT gave you a vote on how the treasury of that DAO was spent? And that's kind of the idea of Nouns. It's like the values are emergent because the community grows over time, one at a time. Every day, one new person, usually joins Nouns, and they bring their voice and they bring their intention and they bring their thoughts on Nouns to bear. And yeah, we just work together to do interesting things. And even though those values are sort of emergent because the DAO decides how to spend the treasury, generally speaking, it's been things like, creative pursuits, like interesting animations, public goods, like funding Gitcoin, like funding the Protocol Guild, funding, glasses for kids who can't afford them. It's been community activations like what we're doing with the Noun Square have been funded by Nouns. We have an esports team, which is actually very competitive in Dota and some other Pokemon Unite and some other games. So just all sorts of really interesting projects where the one sort of common thread is that they all sort of have this art project in mind of like, how can we like contribute to build this headless brand together in an artistic and creative way without any kind of top down control. And you'll often see these noggles, these are called like the Nouns glasses or noggles. You'll see those on a lot of different projects sort of as a unifying branding factor to say, oh yeah, that's something that was funded by Nouns.
Gotcha. So it's a collective, like a DAO type.
It
How
is a
many
day.
members?
It's a day. Yeah.
Yeah, how many members currently?
I don't know what the up to date numbers are on that. I could probably look into it and get back to you. It's been a little while since I looked into it, but active members, you're looking at like a DAO of like 100 to 150 active votes on
Got
on
it.
a on a
And then in order
proposal.
for you or somebody who might be interested in joining the collective, they have to buy the noun, right? That's like
Well,
a
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the most interesting things about Nouns is that from the very get go, it was never one of those communities where you have to buy to join.
mm,
When Nouns first launched, by the way, it launched in this like frothy time period that I was just talking about before. And like the very first Noun, I don't know if you know this, but the very first Noun went for 600 ETH. Like
oh
things
my
were out
god.
of control. The early Nouns went for like 600 and then around 100 ETH. And then for a while, they were going for between 50 and 100 ETH. So that's why the treasury became so big. But it also meant that a lot of people were obviously blocked out because if they weren't an early minter of a punk or early to Ethereum or whatever, they may not have that much ETH lying around to buy a noun. But that never blocked people from joining Nouns. Like for myself, for example, I was, very, very active in Nouns as a builder for almost 2 years before, well, a year and a half before I managed to grab my own noun. Now I have four, and that's sort of happened over time. But you don't have to buy a noun to be involved. You can be a builder. You can be an artist who's funded by Nouns. You can, be a fan of the esports team. You can go to the Nouns Deli in Melbourne and buy a hamburger. You can go to Noun Coffee pop-ups in LA and buy Noun branded coffee. So there's lots of different ways that you can sort of participate in this experiment without having to buy a noun. But if you want to be involved in the governance and actually have a say in how the treasury is spent, that's where it's good to buy a noun, put your money where your mouth is, and have your say.
No, that's interesting, and that's actually good. So you still have the ability to join your collective without, well, you might not have governance rights, but you can still be a part of the community and be embraced by the community, which is, very
Yeah.
important because not everyone can afford an asset like that. So that's actually really interesting to me. I was around in 2021.
Yeah.
I dabbled a little bit in the NFTs. But I do remember the froth of the market, the Bored Apes and whatnot. So very cool to see. And also with the with Nouns, am I correct knowing that there's an event coming up in October, right? Nouns, there's
Yes,
like a
the
Nouns
first
Square.
you could call it a conference, although it's probably going to be more of like an unconference. But it's called Nouns Town, and it's going to be held in a couple of weeks, actually, in October the 12th. It's being organized by Benjamin Latsko. He's done an amazing job. And it's really more like a cultural celebration. So it's not going to be like, boring sitting in a conference room listening to speeches. It's going to be a lot of different events, a lot of live art shows, a lot of builders bringing what they're working on to sort of show off and collaborate. And I am extremely sad because I will not be able to be there
Whoa.
On a personal front, I've got a 3-week-old baby at home and a
Congrats.
2-year-old as well. So just not in the cards this time to make it to LA. But I am super bummed because it's everyone I know from Nouns, basically everyone I've met over the last 2 years is going to be in LA. It feels like so I'm going to have super FOMO. But if you can make it, like if you're near LA or you love Nouns or you're interested in Nouns, there are still tickets, I think, and I definitely recommend checking it out. One of the nights of Nountown too, there's like a festival within a festival. It's called Nouns Fest, and it's like basically a film festival. And this is a
Mhm.
funded prop that was led by a few people, but primarily among them, Stupid Buddy, who you might know from Robot Chicken in your youth, if you ever watched Robot Chicken on Adult Swim. They were funded by Nouns to run this like this Nounish animation program, where essentially they just went to animators and said, "Hey, apply with some sketches for an animation that you want to do, and you have full creative control. It has to be like, it has to invoke nouns somehow, but other than that, there's no description of what you have to do. There's no brief. You just do what makes you happy." And they gave away all this money to animators to have them make these amazing nounish animations, and they're all going to be shown in LA at one showing during Nounstown. So that'll be a highlight for sure.
Yeah, I actually live in LA. I actually live near Venice, so, like, I have to
Nice.
go.
It's
I
gonna be
saw
real nearby for you then.
Yeah, I
You
saw
gotta go.
Jack's post. Shout out to Jack Wild. He's
Jack is
from
going to be there. I'm going to be living vicariously through Jack. So the Noun Square, our media collective, you can see our logo behind me here. We're sending Jack over to Venice for Nounstown. He's going to be making lots of content and try to keep those of us who can't make it up to date on what's going on. So
Yeah, I'm excited for it, man. I actually need to buy the tickets. I remember he posted a link, never got to it, but I know you don't need to have announced to enter. I do remember that. So that was kind of cool. So
yeah.
looking for that. But I totally understand why you weren't there. I'm actually a father of twin boys who just turned 2, so
Oh
I
wow.
know you're feeling
Yeah,
one at
you got 2
2
of
and
them
one
right
at
off the bat, though. You
right
that's
off
nuts,
the
man.
bat, just a boom. But
Whew.
I can imagine it's not easy. But
I
congratulations
don't know how you do
on.
twins, man. That's kudos to you because I often thought about that. I'm like, damn, with 2, I don't know, 2 the same age, I don't know what to do.
I mean, I have a friend who did from college. He had triplets.
That's crazy, man.
That is literally like they deserve
That's life
more, like
changing. I mean, one and done on the one hand, but still,
yeah,
like you don't have to worry.
yeah,
Your family is like done. You don't have to worry about adding to it.
that's true, that's true. Now I can
Still
just focus
crazy,
on my
man.
podcast. My
Yeah,
kitchen.
that's right.
So talk to me. Okay, so 2021 now just round. You were really involved in that, and now you've made the entrance into the Noun Square, and that's what you
Yeah,
founded. Talk to me.
yeah.
Talk to us about Noun Square. What I know it's your goal is to educate, but what made you want to pursue that?
It's really funny because to go way back, actually, my educational training is in journalism. I did a
Mm,
degree in journalism and never used it. Never went into a career as a journalist, if such a thing exists. I'm just kidding. I know there are some people who make a living as journalists, but that was kind of the going joke when I was studying at the time. Is like they're training us for this career that barely exists anymore because if everybody's a journalist, nobody's a journalist. And it was kind of in the blogging era when everyone was writing and nobody wanted to pay anybody to do journalistic work. And so I ended up going into other fields. Started my own consultancy. Was doing a lot of freelance work, marketing consultancy and business development, go to market, and these types of things locally where I live. A lot of the people that I went to school with also didn't end up going into journalism. But it's funny that, like, fast forward to the present, and a lot of what I am doing now, the podcast that we do and the media that we do and whatnot is, definitely definitely related anyway to journalism. So it's funny how things come full circle. But how this space started is kind of an interesting story. Like basically, it was just I was looking for a way to get more involved in nouns, and I had been hosting some Twitter Spaces for a project that I was consulting with called Noun Punks, which was just like
mhm.
a nounish extension at the time. And I met one of the founders of Nouns, Seneca, that way, and he encouraged me to keep doing that, and actually hired me to do some spaces for his project called Prop House. So I sort of had dipped my toes into that water, I guess. And then one of the other founders of Nouns, who I mentioned earlier, 4156, he tweeted out something like that he'd love to see Noun O'Clock become a moment of celebration for the internet. Now to pause there for a second, Noun O'Clock is this thing within the nouns community that's a bit niche, but because there's a 24-hour auction for every noun that goes up to that gets sold, there's this time every single day where the noun ends, the auction ends rather, and the new noun is born, and that's just called Noun O'Clock in our parlance. And so his idea was like it'd be kind of cool if like every day there was a little mini celebration of Noun O'Clock. And a friend of mine, Noun 142, he goes by, sent me a message. We were kind of talking back and forth. We were like, what if we just did a Twitter Spaces at that time and just, had a time for the community to come together and watch the auction and what have you? And that was the 13th, that was the 13th of June, 2022. And we just started doing those spaces. People liked it. We started doing it every day. After we'd done it for a while and it was kind of popular, we did a funding proposal and we're funded to do it for about 6 months, and sort of just grew it from there. And I think today's space, which as we're recording now, it's about 3:30 p.m. here EST. So in about a half an hour or thereabouts, we'll be going live with our, I want to say 830th in a row without missing. So we've definitely done a lot of these spaces. Let me check, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. It is number
you've actually done it even when like the birthday of your kid and you still show up every day, or
so it's important to mention that we have a team, right? We have a team of about 6 of us that are working on this in different capacities. And so like Robot Fish Girl is one of my co-hosts, and she definitely holds it down a lot of the time that I can't. So we both fill in and all fill in where we need to. But as a team though, 831 in a row, which is pretty cool. It's nice to be able to say that we've done something so consistently and been this like consistent touch point through, now like a bull market, a bear market, kind of a mini bull market, another bear market. Like we've been through all sorts of different types of market terrain, but we're just kind of trying to be that one place that people know they can always come, and it's not going to be depressing, and we're going to have interesting stuff to talk about at least. So
I mean, that's just beyond remarkable. That's dedication. That's called consistency, and that's about 2 years.
It probably means we have something mentally wrong with us, but it's fine. It's
well, yeah, but hey, we all have a little thing for us doing these kind of things.
Touch.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So that's for any entrepreneur actually listening to this, because a lot of people are entrepreneurs who follow my stuff, because I like to get into touch with like the builders and have them share their stories of whatever they're working on. The biggest thing that I always tell them is you have to be consistent. Do not worry about the day in and day out, the success. Just keep getting better and better. And that's a testament of what you guys are doing. So kudos.
Yeah, the thing about doing things consistently too is that you get this really tight iterative circle where you can change things, you can like A/B test yourself. If you're doing a show every day, you can try things out every single day of the week, and it's not high risk, it's not high cost. And you can just find out what works and what doesn't and where to allocate your resources. That's one thing that we've done, for example. Like we used to put a lot of energy into like booking a guest every single day for this space. And it actually like almost burnt us out at one point. Cause like, imagine trying to get a guest. It's, as a podcast host, it's hard enough to get a guest once a week or every couple of weeks. We were getting a guest every single day, and it was just burning us out. And we were like, this is not a good use of our resources. Let's like shift the focus a little bit, have some different segments, but we don't need to have a guest every day. Start a podcast where we can have guests more routinely. And that's kind of where the idea for the Zero Rights Reserve podcast came from. So again, like it's just, if you're experimenting, you're trying new things, then you think of new ways to try to attack the problem. And it's, it gives you a leg up, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's key not to burn yourself out. And obviously you might have an idea, but as an entrepreneur, you got to learn when to, navigate to different directions, and there's nothing wrong with that. Talk to me. So, okay, you have Nouns Collect or Noun Square. Now you have the Yellow Collective. What's the Yellow Collective?
So the story on the Yellow Collective is, if I can go back to when we founded the Noun Square, in addition to the daily Twitter Spaces that we were doing and some of the YouTube videos and sort of educational content that we were making, another piece of what we were doing was hosting a lot of art contests around the Daily Noun, and just trying to engage generally with artists all over the world and give them opportunities to win real ETH prizes, just for doing fun nounish art. And that kind of that side of things actually blew up to be almost as big as sort of the spaces and educational content. So we always had this vision from early days, like it would be nice if we could take that piece of things and spin it out into its own entity, its own flywheel that could support artists, separate from any of the content we were making. So that was kind of like the original impetus, the original goal for the Yellow Collective. We knew we wanted to launch it as sort of a DAO, like a nounish DAO in structure, but not necessarily a really governance heavy DAO like Nouns proper is, or like some of the other nounish DAOs are, but more so like a culture club that's just sort of united with this goal of supporting and empowering and amplifying artists and creators in our space. So when Base launched last year, we were actually right at the crux right before that of trying to decide where we were going to launch. We knew we were going to use a protocol called Nouns Builder, which was built by Zora, which allows basically anyone with an idea to, in a few clicks, launch a nounish fork, essentially. But we didn't know we didn't know if we were going to be on Optimism, if we were going to go on Arbitrum, if we were going to go on Zora, because ZoraNet had just launched, or Base. And Base just launched like August. We were sort of in the planning stages when it launched in early August, and it was almost like a sign that we saw that we should go on Base, was that we were looking at names for our collective, and we were like, oh, we could call it. Yeah, we had lots of different name ideas, but at one point we had the idea, why don't we just try to claim the yellow emoji? Because like emojis are very mimetic. Memes are important. People love memes. They relate to memes. And I was like, no one has really claimed the yellow circle emoji. Like Optimism was using the red emoji, and other groups and other DAOs were using different emojis, but no one was using the red or the yellow circle. So I was like, hey, let's just call ourselves the Yellow Collective, because if you look behind me, our Noun Square logo has sort of the yellow aesthetic behind. The original Nouns logo was like red noggles as well on a yellow background. Yellow's optimistic. It's sunny. It's one of my favorite colors. So I was like, hey, let's just go with the Yellow Collective, and we'll sort of claim this emoji. And as we were planning that, it wasn't like 2 days later that Jesse tweets out a yellow circle emoji. We're like, what the hell? How does Jesse know? And it turned out that they had chosen to use the yellow emoji for On-Chain Summer, the first On-Chain Summer, if you remember. And so we took that as a sign. We're like, hey, yeah, this is cool. We'll both use the yellow, but obviously we made the right choice here. And then seeing how Jesse and team just sort of really supported builders during On-Chain Summer was really inspiring, because I think a lot of ecosystems don't really understand that builders primarily want and need amplification and support for what they're building. It's nice to be funded in United States dollars as well. That pays the bills, but what you really need is for people to say, hey, I see what you're building. I'm going to amplify it to my network. And that's something that Jesse and the rest of the Base team has done really well from the start. And when we saw that, we're like, okay, this is the right move for us. And that's when we began getting ready to launch Yellow. Which we did do earlier this year in January. We launched, and it's been pretty cool. Basically, it's a daily auction just like Nouns, but all the art is community drawn. So we had a big contest with our community where everyone could submit heads, and the top 50 heads got added to the collection. And we've just used all the proceeds to do different initiatives to support artists, essentially collaborations with artists, big and small, from all over the world. We do like a monthly spotlight edition where we do a drop with an artist, often an artist who hasn't done much work on an L2 or on Base. We highlight it, and we split the proceeds. So we've helped a lot of artists to make money that way. And we just built a really solid community on Farcaster that is just trying to help artists. So that's the story on Yellow.
I love it. I'm all about doing things, especially so I'm new to the on-chain world. Obviously, for me, on-chain is kind of one of those buzzwords people talk about, but unless if you actually really utilize it, you don't really know what it means. But it gives you so much. Like, I love what it stands for now, giving power back to creators. Because in traditional fields, the money goes to the big companies, the big firms, and the
Yeah.
content creators are kind of left out. And so whether you're an artist, because like for instance, my first actually opportunity, because on these podcasts that I've done, I've typically have pushed them out to like YouTube, Spotify, all that. And it wasn't until recently that Lucas put me on Pods Media, so that was cool. And then once I got on Pods Media, I had the Jesse clip, and so I posted on Jesse's interview on Pods Media, and that thing, Coinbase Wallet, put it on its platform, and then I started seeing, obviously people are minting it, and then I'm actually making real money.
Yeah.
And then it makes me realize, my God, on chain, and like actually one of the basically one of the examples of just being able to contribute something as a creator and then getting paid for, I think is very powerful. And I think that's kind of like how this industry is going. That's why I think on chain is the future. And for instance, too, one person I interviewed was Naomi, the Olympic
Yeah.
star from track and field, was blowing up on Farcaster and Warpcast, and we'll get into Farcaster briefly before we end
She's
because
our next guest too on our podcast. Actually, everybody's
she's
after Naomi.
she's
We just,
great. She's
yeah,
great. I know. What she's doing is great, but like she kind of got me into thinking like, oh my God, this is potentially what on-chain can do. And she's monetized her content.
yeah,
And now for me, it's not necessarily me monetizing my brand. I don't care about that, but I want to help others who, for instance, I have a magician coming on to the podcast. I just did one. He wants to do magic on chain. I don't know anyone doing magic on chain, but he should be able to utilize this opportunity. So I love what
yeah.
you're doing. And I just love what everything is standing for. Let me just ask you this question before I get into Farcaster. Well, let's tie into Farcaster. The Farcaster VIP highlighting, is that
Hmm.
an ability for you? Like, why are you doing that? Just to give more exposure to those that don't have, the name recognition, or what's your purpose on that?
Yeah, the idea behind Farcaster VIP, which is a writing series that I've been doing on Paragraph. I'm only about a week and a half in right now. I've done 7 of them, I think. The idea was, well, Dan, the founder of Farcaster DWR. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. There's a car alarm going off. Dan, the founder of Farcaster DWR, someone asked him, why has growth on Farcaster slowed? And his answer was not enough interesting content, which is like a typical Danism. I don't think anything's wrong with what he's saying, because as the founder, he's saying, like, of course, if we want to attract more people, we need more interesting content. But some people took that comment and ran with it, and they were like, oh, this, Dan's saying that nobody's interesting. The original people who were early to Farcaster, don't have anything interesting to share. Nobody wants to come listen to them, blah, blah, blah. And just took it to the ultimate self-flagellation of saying that everybody who's early sucks on Farcaster. And I wanted to kind of like combat against that, and I just made a cast saying like maybe I should do a daily series where I highlight a very interesting person on Farcaster, just to combat that narrative that there are no interesting people on Farcaster. So originally it was just going to be like a cast per day, but in typical Toady fashion, I took it too far. And the very first one that I posted on Chris Carella, the founder of Purple, wouldn't fit in a cast, even with the long casts. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to put this on Paragraph or something. So I made a Paragraph and I put it on there, and it kind of blew up. People really loved it. Chris really appreciated it. And I said, okay, well, this is neat. And then I proceeded to highlight, 4 more people that week. And once you've sort of gone to a certain length, it's hard to kind of go back. Like, I don't want to do a full length, paragraph on Chris, and then when I'm highlighting Melissa Burr or something, just give her a quick cast and be like, oh, also Melissa's good. So I end up, doing some research, listening to podcasts, and trying to make these actually interesting, introspective, features on these people. And so that was kind of the idea, is like highlight the very interesting people, of which there are many, in my opinion, on Farcaster, and just highlight it out so people can sort of see, oh, I should follow this person. Maybe if they see the cross posting I've been doing on X, maybe they'll see it and be like, oh, maybe I should check out Farcaster. Maybe everything they're saying about Farcaster being boring isn't exactly true. And that's sort of the impetus behind the project. I should point out too, though, that originally I said I was going to be doing it every day. After 5 days, I realized it was just too much with everything else that I've got going on. So sometimes it's important to know when to pivot and when to like not burn yourself out. So I kind of just said, we're going to pump the brakes here and see about doing it maybe 2 or 3 times a week and see how that feels, and see what the demand is for it. But overall, this past week I've done 2 of them. People really appreciated them. I highlighted Benji from Optimism, and he really appreciated it. Anyway, people have just been really enjoying it, and I'll keep doing it as long as people still think it's useful. So
Yeah, no, I think from everything I've gathered, I think people from the outside looking in, it's actually very useful, and I think people really do appreciate it, especially the ones that are highlighted. I think Farcaster to me, so I have literally no one following, like 228 people. You have 100,000. So I think what it comes down to is, so I can feel I can probably give a lot of input that maybe the people on the inside don't really know. And I know, so my community is all basically X. I'm almost 10,000 on X, solid
yeah.
community. And I try to get them to go in the Farcaster world, but I feel like it's very daunting for a
Mm-hmm.
new person to come in, because not for a couple reasons. Number one, it's hard to navigate. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know what a cast is. You don't know what these channels are. Number two, a lot of the content that you put out, unless if you're at a certain amount of followers, you're invisible, really. So it's hard to kind of like. So I feel like new people might feel kind of disillusioned of the whole success, what would be your advice? And I want to end it on this note, Toady. What would
Mhm.
be your advice to a new person or someone with a smaller account, such as myself, in order for them to grow and they want to grow in Farcaster? What would be your best advice to that individual?
So first of all, I'll preface by saying many of us in Nouns got sort of lucky because one thing that happened in the Nouns community is that the founders decided to basically kill the Discord that was previously the place where everybody in the Nouns community communicated. This happened almost 2 years ago now. And their reasoning for doing that was that, if Nouns is going to be a truly decentralized organization, then there shouldn't be a centrally owned location where, 2 or 3 people are making the decision of who can join, who can't join, who gets banned, who can say what. And so they just made the Discord, I mean, with some notice, but they made the Discord read only. And they said, go forth, go forth and find other places to gather. And so from that diaspora, that's kind of like where Nouns ended up very early on Farcaster. It was one of the very first channels on Farcaster when Warpcast first introduced channels. And because of that, many of us went there and we were very early to the protocol. And when you're early to things, you tend to get certain benefits. And one of those things is that you build up followers faster at a faster rate because you've just been there longer and you know how the app works. So many of us in Nouns, myself, Prof. Worder, Seneca, Noun 40, have larger followings because we've been there for so long, which is amazing. But I think there is there's some, there's, the meme, there's lesson in there. I think there is a lesson in there, which is that if you are coming to a network like Farcaster new, try to find your tribe, try to find a community. We were lucky that Nouns kind of moved there together. So we had a built-in tribe, but that's why it never really felt lonely, I think, for us there. Cause it was like, we already had our Nouns community. We had our channel, we had people to talk to. And then, you can kind of grow your community and find other communities from there. And I don't know if you've seen what's happening very soon. I don't know when this is going to go out, but very soon there's going to be a change to the way channels work over on Farcaster, and they're going to be treated less like hashtags, which is kind of what they're used as now, and more as like cozy corners, where like almost like more like a subreddit that you have to be a member of. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes the dynamic. But my advice would be like, go and find these channels, these cozy corners where you sort of have something in common with people. So if you're an artist, come and find us in the /yellow channel on Warpcast, and we're going to be ecstatic to see your art. We're going to encourage you, and you'll be able to build a following that way and find friends on Farcaster that way. If you're someone who just loves looking at cars, like 1960s cars from Cuba and all these other interesting types of vehicles, there's a friend of mine, Basement 5K, who started a channel recently just called Unique Vehicles, and he's building up this little organic community of people who love sharing images of these types of things. So find your like niche interest, join that channel however you have to do it, and then build your social network that way, because Farcaster really is a social network more than it is social media. People like you and I like to obviously leverage that network to put out the media that we're creating as content creators, but ultimately it is that network that is most important. So go and find your people, create your network, and then the rest will follow.
Great advice. Toady Hawk, thank you for being on the podcast.
Of course, man. I got more time if you want to keep chatting, but it's up to you.
No, well, I could probably talk to you for a while, and we'll talk offline, but I do feel that that was a perfect place to end. And
Sweet.
I've also noticed retention on longer videos declines probably a lot.
Yeah, you're
So I try to
right.
keep it around 20 to 30. Yeah, no one
Smart.
ever watches it, but 20 to 30 minutes. But everyone, if you're watching this on, if you're listening to this on Spotify, come to YouTube. I'm going to make sure Toady's Warpcast information is there. Obviously, his X
Yeah.
account, but he's a big deal on Warpcast. And if you are interested, and also, you'll learn more about, the Yellow Collective and Nouns and Noun Square. So yeah, if you
I
guys
mostly
are,
just shit post, but from here, interdispersed, I like to, put in some interesting stuff that you might
that's the
like.
best way.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. And if you are watching us on YouTube, please smash the like and hit the follow. It's simple, it's free, helps me produce more content. Until next time, everyone.
Do it and go mint. This is gonna be mintable, right?
Of course.
Yeah, go mint. Help build out. It doesn't cost you more than
baby.
$10.
Let's get this on Coinbase wallet again.
There
Let's
you go.
go.
And Neri, are you listening? Help build out here.
Help me out, please. And if you ever want to be on the podcast, Neri, offer is always there.
That's right. Don't ask, don't get.